today. And I don't know why. And it kind of popped in my head. And we probably should, because throats are, you know, that's a big deal too. I'm going to leave that one to the vets, but
Thanks, Kenny.
but throats are, you know, you can stop a deal on a throat. And I think horses are scoped too much. I don't know how you solve that problem, but there needs to be some sort of limits on that, because horse getting scoped 10, 12, 15 times is brutal. And I actually can tell you, I don't really like, I'm not even big on scoping fillies at all, because fillies don't have retinoid problems. And palate issues you really don't surface until they get to the racetrack. And usually those aren't extreme. But fillies, colts with big long necks or colts that are growthy tend to have retinoid issues. And those I would definitely, you know, so that Nathan checked that one out close, and he's usually really good. Asymmetric. So you guys take it from there.
Well, I agree.
Left that one off.
I agree. Well, I mean, I'll just keep that simple, but asymmetric throats, everybody wants to know where they're going to go, and the answer is we don't know which way they're going to go. But I do think colts tend to go the wrong way way more often than fillies, you know.
Well, I think that's why the video scopes have come to the forefront. And I was talking to actually Don Richardson Barrett, which is interesting because I have so many horses still at the 2-year-old sale, but the 2-year-old consignments are not using the video scopes like us yearling consignments. And maybe as you as buyers get more comfortable with that, the video scopes at the yearlings, it will trickle down to the 2-year-old sales, because I feel like, and I know Nate does too, that the video scopes, especially during COVID, became a standard.
Well, sir, I'll talk a little bit about that. I think the video scoping is a great idea. The equipment's improved a lot. Most people are doing them relatively close to the sale, and they are required to be done within a certain number of days. It certainly makes a difference. Again, people are looking for that grade 1 throat. I think Scott Pierce, I don't know what year it was, published a really good research paper on throats and how they change over time. The vast majority of them don't. They stay the same or get better. Most of them don't get worse. There are horses that do. And I think certainly identifying the really large colts that you got to worry about, I think, is he ataxic too? Those I'm going to worry about. But certainly 2A throats, I've had a lot of pinhookers that will avoid any 2A throat. There's a huge range of 2A. There's a 2A that's almost a grade 1, and that's probably the vast majority of horses fall in that category. And when you see 2A on a report, you don't need to run. You do need to have someone scope it though, or at least look at the video, because you can have a 2A that's clearly really hard to get to open. And in reference to weanlings, I think weanlings typically are the ones that we see the most improvement out of, generally because it's probably behaviorally related. They are a booger to scope sometimes, just because they don't want to cooperate whatsoever. And so sometimes the read you get on them is not accurate, or it's maybe a little bit better than you see it today, just because they'll cooperate later. My take on scopes, if it's, as long as they are functional. I've had too many horses that were even 2A, 2B that go on and race. So I think that walking up and looking for a grade 1, I think it's a mistake. We should say that they work or they don't, because the 2A range is so huge that it can be a 2A, but just one that I wouldn't recommend, or one that I think most horses fall under, and that's kind of the spectrum. It's huge. So you really need to take a look at the video and not just walk away.
I want to add on to this discussion. Having been out in Southern California and practicing there for a little over 10 years on that circuit, and doing a lot of surgery there, throats, arthroscopies, all of those things, I have to mention that the number of 2A and 2B throats that I would scope on a routine basis that did not need surgery was much greater than the number of horses that we were doing tiebacks on. For me, out here, a 2A throat is a perfectly fine racing throat. A 2B throat, if I occlude that nostril, and he has a nice huge throat, if that horse has a nice huge throat, that doesn't take that horse off the table for me, the 2B grade. Certainly it requires a conversation between my client and me. Okay, here's the potential risk. And look, we have such skilled surgeons out there doing tiebacks now that the success rate is quite good. So I think when we're talking about 2B throats, for me, if they've got that nice big throat, when you occlude the nostrils, it's a 2B. The main thing that the trainer, you can comment on this, but I think the main thing that you're going to hear from the trainer is, or from the vet when it gets in the shed row is, oh, it's asymmetrical, oh, it's a little slow on the left. And so if you have a trainer who can tolerate hearing that because the horse is running and doing fine, then that's a perfectly acceptable throat to me. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, you can hear horses when you watch them gallop, especially the second half of their gallops, and I like to place myself somewhere where I can hear them. You know, in Europe, they actually have a different process when you buy a horse. Years back, at least, that you didn't scope it. You did a wind test on a farm, and they gallop it past, and you'd listen. Because you can hear a lot of things. I mean, so irregardless of what the veterinarian says, if I hear that this horse is making a little extra noise or there's a little whistle, because you can tell the difference between a horse that has a retinoid that's blocking its airway and a horse that's displacing. And so a lot of that information you can gather, watching a horse train.
Yeah, I think this is another great example of where education needs to happen from sellers and vets to their buyers, because, as you said, so many people hear 2B or 2A and automatically the horse doesn't scope. You know, and I think we've all had horses at a sale that they might have 10 scopes, and this guy says the horse doesn't scope. Well, the other 9 vets did, and the horse prints 400,000 and is a stakes horse. So I think that is, for all of us as sellers, I'm sure there's a lot of frustration that this isn't it's not a guarantee the horse is going to have a problem, and it's not a guarantee the horse is going to be fine if he's a grade 1. So I think that's where, can we put some data to this, and can we really make sure that our buyers are understanding, 2A is just a variation of normal. It's not necessarily anything that means the horse is going to have a wind problem.
What I try to avoid is analysis paralysis. I think vets are great, but at the same time, if I have to have NSF on every marking, then I'm never going to buy a horse. And so I think that buyers need to be a little more open-minded. They need to listen to their veterinarians, but they need not to let a small finding stop their chance to maybe buy the next champion. You never know. And you got to there's some give and take. I think the vets need to give you as much information as they can without stopping, a sale. And I think they do the best they can. They want to feed you the right info, but you've got to figure out, where the balance is. And there are people that, he's right, there are people that won't buy a horse unless it's perfect. I mean, it doesn't exist. This doesn't exist.
I think it's where we see, we're going to see in the TDN after the sale that somebody's going to buy a horse that checked all the boxes. I know we all hate that phrase, but like in the end, I think the goal should be to buy what Kenny's buying is we're trying to buy racehorses. And I think so many people want to buy the horse that's perfect, that is perfect, but the goal is to buy a horse that's going to win a grade 1. And that's what we should all be aiming for, not being able to buy a horse that vets win.
I should have never said anything. I want you all to turn down every horse with every little bitty issue so I can buy it.
I think that's a great